Welcome to At America. And for those who are new here, At America is the American Center under the U.S. embassies here in Indonesia. And our mission is to provide spaces for Indonesians to learn more about the American culture through our programs and also event. My name is Nora Fakira, and I will be the host for today's event. In this lovely evening, At America, in collaboration with Education USA, presented a session with the theme of Speak with Confidence, Public Speaking for Success in U.S. Classroom. Give it a round of applause, everyone. And today's event is the first part of our Speak with Confidence series, specially designed to help you to get ready for studying in the United States. And in many US classrooms, students are encouraged to actively participate, share ideas, and also present in front of others. So having a strong public speaking skills is definitely a big advantage. And before we jump into today's session, we would like to engage our online participant with a quick trivia quiz. And the question is, which technique can help reduce nervousness before speaking? A, not preparing at all. B, deep breathing. C, drinking lots of caffeine. Or D, avoiding eye contact with the audience. You can submit your answers in our online platforms. And for those of you who answered correctly, we'll give you a special shout out by the end of today's event. So make sure you stay tuned until the end of the events. And now let's get into the main session. Today's session will be guided by our moderator. She is one of the Education USA advisors. Please welcome to the stage, Caroline Darmanto.
Thank you, Nara. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Oke, sebelum kita mulai acaranya, aku mau memperkenalkan dulu Education USA dan juga menjelaskan terms and conditions-nya untuk teman-teman semua bisa mendapatkan prize at the end of the event next month. Oke, teman-teman di sini ada yang udah pernah dengar Education USA? Anyone here knows? Okay, anyone else? You've never heard of Education USA before? Oke, kalau gitu, Education USA is a network under the US Department of State. Jadi kita berada di lebih dari 170 countries globally. Kita di sini membantu teman-teman semua untuk berkuliah ke Amerika Serikat melalui free advising sessions, melalui memberikan acara-acara gratis seperti malam ini. Gitu. Nah, jadi apa aja sih yang bisa kita bantu? Sebenarnya semuanya dari awal sampai akhir. So if you don't know where to start but you really want to go to the US to study, you can always book an appointment with any of the advisors yang ada di Indonesia melalui QR code yang ada di belakang saya. Gitu. Nah, jadi so this is going to be very important. So you might want to take a picture of this right now because this is going ini akan sangat berhubungan dengan nanti bagaimana bisa mendapatkan voucher tes bahasa Inggrisnya. So I'll give you some time to take a picture of this. All good? All done? Right. So the next one, let's see if I can bring the slide. Ada yang mungkin udah sempat ngeliat iklannya di social media, di Instagram, terms and conditions-nya. Okay. Anyone here knows kalau datang ke 2 series dari acara ini, hari ini dan tanggal 19 Mei nanti, Speak with Confidence, kalian bisa mendapatkan voucher tes gratis. Ada yang udah tahu? Okay, so basically if you attend both of the sessions hari ini dari secara in person ya, jadi mohon maaf untuk teman-teman semua yang nonton online, kami belum bisa memberikan vouchernya. Mungkin siapa tahu lain kali bisa datang kayak tampilkan secara langsung ya. Nah, jadi kalau datang ke acara hari ini dan nanti tanggal 19 Mei dan lalu nanti membuat janji temu dengan advisor melalui QR code di belakang saya ini selama 3 kali dalam periode mulai dari tanggal 9 Mei sampai 9 Juni, minimum 3 kali, dan nanti akan ada diskusi lebih lanjut dengan semua advisornya, lalu nanti dinilai progres dari kemajuan application-nya itu seperti apa. Nanti ada assessment-nya juga yang sudah disetujui, dan nanti bisa mendapatkan voucher Duolingo, tes Duolingo gratis. Nah, kapan sih nge-redeem vouchernya? Jadi nanti kita akan mengumumkan teman-teman yang eligible untuk dapat ada 3 orang, itu di tanggal 10 Juni. Nah, di tanggal 10 Juni ini kami akan mengkontak teman-teman yang eligible sebaik 3 orang ini. Lalu nanti setelah dinyatakan eligible untuk mendapatkan voucher Duolingo-nya secara gratis, that voucher must be redeemed atau must be used, digunakan untuk tes selama periode 3 bulan ke depannya. Jadi dari tanggal 10 Juni sampai Juli, Agustus, September. Tanggal 10 September adalah tanggal terakhir teman-teman harus meredeem vouchernya untuk digunakan untuk tes. Kenapa? Karena biasanya deadline untuk application di university itu juga biasa di akhir tahun. Mulai dari September sampai mungkin di awal tahun. So we want to make sure that it is aligned with the application timeline also. Oke, jadi ada di belakang sini. Mungkin kalau teman-teman mau take a picture of this, silahkan juga. Nah, jadi nanti selama advising session atau selama appointment one-on-one, teman-teman semua harus memperlihatkan application progress-nya. Jadi yang dimaksud di sini adalah, let's say misalnya pertemuan pertama teman-teman masih bertanya gimana cara mendaftarnya. Lalu di pertemuan kedua berarti seharusnya tidak bertanya di pertanyaan yang sama, tapi apa mungkin memberikan hasil risetnya, Kak kayaknya saya tertarik mendaftar ke 3 sekolah ini. Gitu. Nah mungkin nanti di pertemuan selanjutnya udah pembahasannya yang lain, misalnya membahas bagaimana cara mendapatkan scholarship-nya, atau mungkin bagaimana cara menulis esai, atau mungkin minta di-review CV atau esainya. So every meeting you have to show improvement, you have to show progress, baru nanti bisa kami assess di akhir periode whether or not kalian eligible untuk mendapatkan voucher atau tidak. Gitu. Nah, silahkan di foto dulu. Nantinya kalau misalnya ada pertanyaan lebih lanjut, silahkan kontak saya atau Mei. Kami akan ada di sini sampai akhir acara. Dan kami juga ada di luar nanti selesai acara. Jadi kalau ada pertanyaan lebih lanjut, you know we are more than happy to assist you and to answer your questions. Oke? Right. Sekarang siapa yang udah siap untuk kita lanjut ke acara intinya? Udah siap ya? Okay, so please help me welcome our speaker for today, Mr. Parker Raybourne.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Caroline. I've had the privilege of working with Education USA in the past, and they are an incredible organization, and I'm so glad that each of you are taking the first step of being here tonight to take advantage of some of the services that Education USA offers. If you have plans to study in the United States at some point, Education USA is definitely a great first step. So tonight I'm going to be talking on the topic Speaking with Confidence, and this is going to be about public speaking in the US classroom. And this is important because the US classroom environment is quite different from the classroom environment in Indonesia. And if you have some background on those differences, you're poised for success if you do end up studying in the United States. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Parker Raybourne. I currently work with AMINEF. AMINEF stands for the American Indonesian Exchange Foundation, and AMINEF manages many of the grants that are offered by the United States State Department here in Indonesia. So maybe you've heard of Fulbright. Fulbright is one of our main grants that we manage, but we also manage a handful of other grants as well. If you would like more information on the grants that are available to you as Indonesians, you can visit the AMINEF website, and that's aminef.or.id. And on the AMINEF website, you can click the tab at the top, Grants for Indonesians, and it will tell you all of the opportunities that you have to be able to go to the United States. Many of these are educational in nature, so if you do plan to study in the United States, AMINEF can be a great start. Otherwise, AMINEF exists to build connections between cultures. So we bring people from the United States to Indonesia to teach or study, and we send people from Indonesia to the United States to teach or study. If you have any questions about AMINEF as we go through this, or that you want to speak with me later about, I will stick around after. Feel free to come up to me, and I'll be happy to share some details with you. Because of Aminef, I have spent 3 years in Indonesia. So I originally came to Indonesia on a Fulbright ETA grant. That stands for English Teaching Assistant. Maybe in the past you've heard it as ETA, or maybe some of you have had an ETA in your classrooms here in Indonesia. English teaching assistants work with Indonesian teachers in the classroom to act as a native English speaker for Indonesian students. And ETAs also work with Aminef to participate in a variety of programming that we offer for Indonesian students. So I did 1 year as an ETA, and then I had the opportunity to transition to Aminef and work as an ETA coordinator, where I help manage the program there. So in this role, I get to meet all the new ETAs who come from the United States, and I also get to go to all of their sites and placements in Indonesia. All of that to say, I have a great deal of experience in Indonesian classrooms, and then obviously as an American who attended university in the United States, I have a great deal of experience in American classrooms. So hopefully I can take some of the observations that I've had while being in Indonesia and share that with you tonight. Like you can see on the slide, I've taught and learned in US and Indonesian classrooms. And then, of course, my favorite food in Indonesia is nasi padang. And if we have any nasi padang fans, we can also meet after. And then my favorite place in Indonesia is Jogja. That is because when I was a grantee, I was placed at SMK in Satu Cangkringan, which is in North Jogja. So now I want to know about you. I want to know, and we can do this by raising your hand. Raise your hand if you've ever been to the US. I know I've been talking to some of you before. See, 1, 2. Okay, nice. That is good. A good number. Raise your hand if you've ever attended some sort of school in the United States. No one. Okay, good. So I think this will be good information that will be useful for you tonight. And then raise your hand if you're interested in possibly attending some sort of school in the United States. Okay, more hands. I'm happy to see that one. I hope that if you're here, you are at least a little bit interested in attending some sort of school, whether it be university or postgraduate in the United States. For the purposes of tonight's presentation, I'm going to speak from the perspective of university. That's what I'm most familiar with. But if you would like additional details about maybe what a postgraduate program would look like or something like that, you can definitely meet with the EducationUSA team or feel free to reach out to myself. So I have a question for you, and maybe somebody can be very brave. What do you know or what have you heard about education in the US? Do I have any volunteers? Right here in the front, yes. What have you heard? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Amazing. So if you didn't hear, what is your name? Kirana said that she's heard in the US, education is a two-way system. So a lot of times teachers or professors will talk with their students. She also mentioned the Socratic method, which we'll discuss tonight. And what was your third point? That's all. Okay, that it's more of a give and take. So it's definitely a two-way system in the United States. That is a great answer, and we're going to talk about that tonight. Anyone else? Has anyone else heard anything about education in the US? Maybe you've heard something from a friend, you've seen something in a movie. Here in the front, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. So I have heard something about education in the US from some of the Education USA advisors in here. They oftentimes told me that the education system in the US is more of a holistic approach. So they review your application carefully, and your personal statement essay is a selling point, your main selling point to go into the university. That's what I have heard about from the Education USA. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And what was your name again? I'm so sorry.
City.
CT. Okay, so CT said that education in the US takes more of a holistic approach, and that is certainly true. Whereas maybe in school you go to learn information about a particular topic, certainly higher education in the US is about preparing you as a person to enter the workforce and to be successful in the US economy, the global economy, etc. Okay, I'm so glad that everyone is participating because I do have a lot of participation tonight. CT, I have a chocolate for you as well. I'm not sure how far the candy will stretch, but we'll see. You better participate early on. So, I do want to start with maybe a personal anecdote from when I was in university. I think if you're a university student in the United States, pretty much across the board, you will need to take some sort of speech or presentation class. And what you're expected to do in the speech and presentation class is learn about public speaking, learn about how to interact with your classmates in a constructive way, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're supposed to take your findings from that class and incorporate them into the rest of your classes going forward. And typically, this class is a freshman year class, so it's your first year on campus. And the assignments for these classes are notoriously difficult. So for me, my speech class, I had to give a speech, I don't know, probably once a month. And in the speech, you have to speak extemporaneously for 5 minutes, and you're videoed the whole time. And anytime you use a filler word, like or oh, or any sort of filler word, you get points taken off of your grade. And then I'm using a filler word. And then you also have to meet with the professor after the class and rewatch the video. And the professor and you will talk about your eye contact or your ability to flow from topic to topic. And all of that to say, this can be a really challenging thing for Americans who are native English speakers. And I think that means it can probably even be more challenging for somebody who's coming from abroad who is maybe not necessarily a native English speaker. But I think this is a good example of how US classrooms can differ, how maybe they can be way more interactive than what you're accustomed to here in Indonesia or what you've experienced so far. So to prepare you for a situation like that, say your freshman year and you're in your first speech class, I want to talk to you about these topics. So first we're going to talk about understanding US classroom expectations, how to give effective presentations, because presentations are a huge part of classes in the United States, communicating with confidence, clarity and conciseness, how to share your ideas in a concise way without using too many words or saying too much, engaging your audience, and handling Q&A sessions. And we'll talk about Q&A in a little bit, but Q&A is huge in the United States, and it's incorporated into almost every part of your class, especially at the university level. So first, let's talk about understanding US classroom expectations. I think the biggest difference that I've noticed in Indonesia versus the United States is a shift from passive listening to active participation. So maybe in your Indonesian high school or university classes, you found that you sit in desks in rows and the teacher speaks at you. And a lot of times you record the notes. Maybe the teacher will ask a question every now and then, and maybe the class will answer all together. It's very rare that you're expected to be in a circle or have a group conversation. Or I do notice actually there are quite a bit of group projects here. Or maybe do an individual project. Maybe that's quite a rare thing to do. In the US, however, professors are expecting you to speak up. So silence in the US can be seen as disengagement. It can be seen as disinterest. Maybe that you're not listening, you're not participating in the class, maybe you don't really care what the professor has to say. It can show that you're just not interested in learning what they're talking about. So to fix this, a lot of times professors in the United States will institute what's called a participation grade. And they all do this a little bit differently, but usually it's 10 to 20% of your final grade. So your grade for the entire course relies on how much you participate with the professor or with your fellow classmates. And a lot of times this can be in the form of questions. Maybe you have to ask 2 questions each class, or it can be about how you present a presentation assignment that you have or something like that. The other difference that I notice is a big difference on ideas of politeness. So in Indonesia, if your teacher says something and you disagree with it, would you ever tell your teacher that you disagree with them? No, probably not. In the US, however, if your teacher says something and you disagree with it, it can be a sign of your grasp of the subject or the subject area if you're able to refute what they say and say why. And then I think the biggest thing, which you have, if you have any knowledge of the United States of America, you should know we're a very individualistic culture. And Indonesia is a very communal culture. So in Indonesia, a lot of things can be based on teamwork. Maybe you reflect the group. So if the class is asked a question, the class answers together. If the class has an assignment, maybe the class helps each other on the assignment. In the US, you are a reflection of just you. So if you get an assignment, that assignment that you submit is a reflection of you. If you get asked a question and you get it wrong, that's on you. It's not on anyone else around you. Another big difference is discussion-based learning. So a lot of university classes will take the format of a seminar or the Socratic method or group projects or peer review. And like I said earlier, this is just to prepare you for working later in the workforce. So when you enter the American job market or the international job market, you're not going to be working on your own. You're going to be expected to work in a group. You're going to be expected to look over what your peers are doing and be critical of it so that your company or whatever group you're working with is successful. And you're going to be expected to engage in some sort of Socratic method. I'm not going to get into the weeds of what the Socratic method is, but basically it's like refuting an idea and supporting an idea. So it's about developing an opinion, and there's different steps you take to do that. Sometimes you can do it individually, sometimes you can do it in a group. And then seminars, that's the most common format in universities in the US. I think another huge part of discussion-based learning is having an opinion. So anytime that you are doing a discussion, whether it be in person or virtually, you are expected to have an opinion. And it doesn't matter if your opinion is right or wrong. A lot of times your professor doesn't really care what your opinion is, actually. They just want to know how you can defend your opinion. So if you have an opinion, what knowledge can you use that you learned in the course to support what you think? And I think the biggest time you're going to find an opinion nowadays is a discussion board. So it would be an online discussion board, usually on your class management platform. And you typically have to go in and pick 2 classmates and see a post that they made about a particular topic and then either agree with or disagree with them and state why. I think the biggest difference, especially in Java, if you're from Java, between a Javanese classroom and an American classroom is how we disagree. In Java, maybe we don't disagree a lot about much. Even if in our hearts we disagree, we don't say we disagree. In America, disagreeing is encouraged. It's the whole point. And there are ways to disagree respectfully. So it is not disrespectful to disagree. And then, of course, like I mentioned on the previous slide, there are participation grades in a lot of classes. So participation matters. At the end of the day, it's better to participate and say something wrong than to not participate and say nothing at all, right? If you're in the Indonesian classroom or the American classroom, you need to participate. So I think these are the most common types of speaking you will encounter if you're in the US classroom. The first would be class discussions. This is just going to be the class as a whole discussing a topic. Usually it's guided by the professor or TA, which is the teaching assistant, or it's going to be cold calling. Before, if I were to be in this room and I would have a question about something and I would say, you, what do you think about this? That would be an example of a cold calling. A lot of times professors will do this to maybe bring your attention back if you are seeming distracted. So one way to avoid cold calling is to constantly look like you're paying attention. And then another type you'll encounter is group presentations. I think you probably do a lot of group presentations here. Is that correct? Yeah. That's the same in the US, and typically you present them as a group. And then, of course, we have individual presentations and speeches, which I think speaks for itself. I think that you do some of that here as well, maybe especially at the university level. And then one thing I wanted to point out, office hours. Is anyone familiar with what office hours are? Yes. Does somebody want to tell us what office hours are? Maybe someone who hasn't spoken before. Okay, that's okay. I will tell you what office hours are. So office hours are time that your professor sets aside outside of class for you to meet with them and discuss maybe something you're working on, whether it be a written project or discuss some of the material that you've covered in the class. And office hours are another way that you can show your professor you're engaged with the course. They are another way that you can kind of perform, right? So speaking in office hours is important. And I can tell you from personal experience, attending office hours puts you in a league above all your classmates. And it's free. And your professors want you to do it. And they're begging you to do it. And a lot of times you just go in there and you end up talking about something random, their favorite movie or the weather or something. But that's a way that you can be remembered, and it's a way that you can probably get a better grade in the class. And then, of course, if you're moving into master's degree or PhD level study, you can have thesis defense. I'm not going to get into that because it's a whole nother thing. But I think some undergrad programs are now instituting thesis type programs. So if you'd like to talk about thesis defense, come see me later. And then there's so many more. I think professors are trying to get creative these days. They're especially trying to be AI. I think AI is kind of making class difficult for them, so they're coming up with new and creative ways to get original thoughts from students and not from some sort of AI chatbot. So, after being in Indonesian classrooms, these are some mistakes that I think Indonesian students may make in a US classroom. And maybe I'm wrong, but these are just my observations. Waiting to be called on rather than volunteering. Like I said earlier, you have to speak up. Over-apologizing before making a point. We don't apologize before we say something. I know it's very common here. Speaking only when 100% certain. In the US, we value the attempt. We're not looking for you to be right. And then I think another huge mistake is that Indonesians will go to the US and assume that their professor or their classmates will know about Indonesia and know that, oh yeah, classes are different in Indonesia, or the expectation is different. Probably that's not the case. Probably the professor maybe knows where Indonesia is on the map, and that's like the extent of it. So it's your job to adapt to the new learning environment. And then, of course, malu. Everyone is shy. In my classroom in Chongringan, this was the biggest issue. No one wanted to do everything because everyone's always malu, 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 malu. I'm so sorry, but you have to speak up. And then remember why you're in the US. You're in the US to have a US educational experience. So as part of that experience, you have to participate, right? Next, I want to move on to structuring an effective presentation. I think at this point, most university level classes, at least at the undergraduate level, presentations are probably 20% of the grade, if not more, maybe 30%. So that's a significant portion of your final grade. And in the US, grades are incredibly important. So why structure matters? American audiences expect a clear flow. They don't want to be fishing around to see what you're thinking. They want to be delivered what you're thinking in a clear and concise order. And then for you, this also builds credibility and trust. So it shows that you know what you're talking about. It shows you took enough time to think about the topic and put it in an order that makes sense. And for your professors, it allows them to follow what you're thinking. So I put this quote here: if I can't follow you, I can't grade you well. And that's true. If a professor can't really understand what you're trying to say or the point you're trying to get across, how are they going to give you a good grade on an assignment? And like I've said multiple times, this just prepares you to work for an American company or an international company. So who has heard of 3.5, the 3.5 structure? Anyone? No one? Okay. I think you've heard of this. Maybe you call it something different. This is going to be probably the universal structure that you will approach any assignment in the US with. It's called 3.5 because typically we think of it as a written assignment. So if you write 5 paragraphs, you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll have 1 paragraph of introduction, 3 paragraphs of body, and 1 paragraph of conclusion. So you have the 3 body paragraphs and the 5 total. And the body will include probably 2 to 3 main points. Usually each paragraph will be a point with supporting evidence. And then the conclusion tells you basically the conclusion. It wraps up everything that you've discussed. The 3.5 expands and expands and expands. So you can use it in presentations, you can use it in written works, and it doesn't always stay 3.5. Maybe like you're writing a huge term paper and your opening introduction is like 3 paragraphs, and then each of your points is 3 paragraphs, and then your conclusion is another 3 paragraphs, right? It's just about ratios. So the ratio is the same, but the paragraph count changes. So I like to think of the introduction as the appetizer, right? So I have some bakwan jagung here. I think that's a corn one. I'm not sure why I ate this, but all of these pictures are my photos. It's the first 30 seconds to set the tone, especially if you're presenting in front of other people. So you will need a hook, and that can be a story, a statistic. A lot of times people will use a quote or a question or a bold statement. I think if probably you've read an article or in the newspaper, you've seen something like this. And then you can state your purpose clearly. Don't make the audience guess, right? In America, culture is so straightforward. Everything is in your face. What you see is what you get. So state your purpose clearly in the beginning. And then the introduction is meant to get your attention, especially in a presentation where you're presenting in front of people. You don't want people to be zoning out or thinking about other things. And then you have your main points. So typically we stick to 3. You'll see today my presentation has more than 3 main points, but EducationUSA asked me to talk about more than 3 things. So every point needs to have a claim. It needs to have what you are trying to say. It needs to have your evidence, and your evidence will include your explanation as to why you believe your claim. And then it should also have transitions. So transitions are the glue. You'll see here I put some example transitions. I'm sure if you've read any article in English, you've seen 1,000 more example transitions. And then avoid information dumping. So this is where outlining is going to be really important. You're going to want to take the key points that are important for your presentation and distill those down. Find which things support your argument the best. Don't just throw everything that you know. You're trying to make an argument. Curate, don't cram. And I think of this as the main course, right? So you've had your appetizer, now you've had your main course, and then you're ready for some dessert. And your dessert is going to be your conclusion. You're going to end with impact. And in your conclusion, you always want to reiterate what you said. You never say, I'm done, or that's it, or thank you. And you also call back to your opening. So a lot of times we call the opening hook, I said opening hook here, a lot of times we call that the thesis, right? Maybe you've heard of your thesis statement. In the conclusion, you repeat your thesis, and you show why you have supported what you believe in your thesis. And you usually leave the audience with one thing to remember. Something I do notice in Indonesian presentations is apologies at the end, maybe like the mohon maaf. Yeah, you don't need to do that. Americans don't apologize. We never make any mistakes ever, so why would we need to apologize, right? Of course, we do make lots of mistakes. That's satire. So I have another activity for you. I think this will work if we do maybe groups of 4. So find the 4 people close to you. And I want you to work with the 4 people close to you. I'll give you maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I want you to come up with a structure for why you chose to study in the US or why you want to study in the US. So I need a hook, I need 3 points, and I need a closing line. Do we need an example? Yes. Okay, good. Let me think on my feet here. I would like to study in the US because I want to meet students from the United States. I want to learn more about the Socratic method, and I want to make connections with professors in the United States. All of this is important to me for studying in the US because it will help me with my future career. Voila, just like that. Okay, so find your groups, 3 to 4 people, and talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to ask at least one group to share with me their structure. Go. And I have more chocolate. How are we doing? Do we need more time? Yes, okay. Maybe take 1 or 2 more minutes. Okay, take 1 more minute. 1 more minute. All right, wrap up your discussions. Wrap up your discussions. I have 1 chocolate bar on the line. Which group thinks they have a good structure that they would like to share? Your group. Okay. Do we have a mic? Another mic? Or I can share mine? Pak. Mungkin di sini? Yeah. All right, let's hear your structure.
Okay, my group thinks that the structure for the hook would be like, oh yes, I want to study in the US because I'm the first generation in my family to go to the US to study abroad, like
Wow.
that. And the first point, what is the first point that you made?
Improving career.
Yeah, so the first point was like, I want to go here to study in the US. I want to pursue a career path and improve my career. And the second point was like, oh, there's this program in the US that is available but not available in Indonesia. And the last point was, what was it again?
Makes friends all around the world.
Yeah, to make connections around the world. Like everyone in the US, they come from all over the place, right? So networking also is important. And the closing line is, so that's why I want to inspire everybody to go to the US because I want to have a clear path in my career and I want to.
Make friends all around the world.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the
Amazing.
point.
That was perfect. A round of applause. I have a chocolate pot. Makasih, Pak. Maybe you can split it with the group. And that also sounds like a great start to an admission essay, does it not? I think that would be something you could possibly meet with Miss Caroline and discuss. Okay, great work, everyone. Next, I want to move on to communicating with confidence. So, you don't need to feel confident to look confident, right? Confidence is just about how you present. It's not about how you feel inside. Confidence is a skill. I think a lot of times we like to think, oh, people are born that way. I was born shy, or I'm born an introvert, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, probably. I'm sure some people are born more confident than others, but that doesn't mean you can't learn to be confident. And in the United States, confidence is so important. A lot of times it doesn't matter what you're saying, it just matters how you say it. I do know it can be especially difficult to feel confident in an unfamiliar environment. So there are certainly times here in Indonesia where I kind of feel like I don't know what's going on. Everything's happening around me. I'm trying to figure out a new culture. I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing, how I'm supposed to be looking. I understand that. And I think that can be a huge issue for a lot of international students who go to the United States. It can be a very overwhelming place at times. So because of that, I want to maybe practice some ways you can improve your confidence. I'm not sure if these are scientific, but there are things that I do that kind of help me a little bit when I'm entering an intimidating environment. So has anyone ever heard of power posing? Yes. Okay, cool. So this is it's a theory, I guess. It's by this lady named Amy Cuddy. She is a professor of business at the University of Harvard, and she delivered this TED Talk on power posing. And at the time, it was, I think, the most popular TED Talk ever, the most viewed, something like that. Now I think it's probably been surpassed by another one. But I think one of the best ways, if you're preparing for a presentation or a class or something that you can get in a confident mindset, is to power pose. So I want everyone to stand up. We're going to practice. Basically, how power posing works, you pick poses that exude confidence. So maybe when you're like this or you're sitting down, blah, 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 you're not very confident. But when you do this and you hold it for a little bit, suddenly you feel like king of the world. Exactly. You suddenly feel more confident. So here I put an example. This is a poster, and then I took the part from the bottom and made it bigger here. But you have your protective ones. These are not feeling confident. When you hide your hands, something like that. But then if you're Wonder Woman, suddenly you're king of the world. And if you're tall and proud, you're also tall and proud. You can sit down. I'm not sure how scientific it is, but she says that there's scientific evidence to show that when you do these poses before a job interview or something important, it does something with your brain and your body to make you feel more confident. I don't know, maybe that's something you could try next time. Another thing around confidence is a lot of times a lack of confidence is just because of adrenaline. So this can just make us feel jittery, right? Sometimes what I do, maybe this is lame, I just take this adrenaline that is making me feel nervous and I just say, I'm excited. And if you reframe your nervousness as excitement in your brain, sometimes that works. Of course, you can breathe early, take deep breaths, arrive early, and then during your talk, of course, you can slow down. I put here the 3-breath reset. This is something that's okay to do. I think a lot of times when we're presenting in front of a group, we don't want to have any moment of silence, but it's okay to pause. A lot of times when you pause, that can really put some emphasis on whatever you're about to say. So maybe you can use those pauses strategically, and you can take a deep breath during those pauses. I think breathing can help with confidence. Using voice as a tool, remember that to sound confident, you have to use a good pace. So you don't want to be talking too fast. That can sound like you're nervous. And if you're talking too slow, that can sound like you're boring. And then, like I said, the power of the pause. If English is not your native language, slow down, right? It's okay. I think most people in the United States at this point have experience speaking in a language that is not their native language. A lot of people will be able to empathize with you needing to take more time to craft your sentences. Next, we have body language and presence. So your posture, stand tall, feet shoulder width apart, hands visible. When our hands are in our pockets, maybe sometimes that makes us seem untrustworthy. And then make sure your movements are deliberate. Your facial expressions should match your content as well. If you're talking about something sad, you're not smiling, right? If you're talking about something happy, you're not like nervous and clenched up. Something that I find that works for me, this is a big hack. If you have something to hold, for some reason that always helps you feel more confident when you're presenting. So here I've got double, I've got the mic and the clicker, but maybe if you're presenting and you have the clicker to hold, for some reason I think that does something with your brain to make you feel more confident. So this is what confidence looks like versus feels like. Like I said, what you're feeling on the inside doesn't have to be reflected in what you're doing. And I can tell you, in the US classroom, everyone wants you to succeed, right? I think a lot of times we think, oh, I don't want to speak up or I don't want to say something wrong because then everyone will be preying on my downfall or will laugh at me or something. I promise you, we're all there to get our participation grade, right? We all want the A. We're all there to get our points. We're all there to do the like funny little thing where we say our opinion and why we think it, and then the professor marks it on the paper. We're all there for the same reason, right? You're not standing out when you're speaking out. And then, of course, fake it till you make it. I like to reframe this as act the part until you become it, but sometimes it's just what you have to do. And like I said, no one is paying attention to you, really. Most people are probably on their laptops scrolling on something, I don't know, something. They're not listening to what you're saying. Say what you need to say, get your points, move on. Next, we have clarity and conciseness. This is our fourth topic. In the US, it's so crucial to be clear. Maybe you've heard that American culture is direct. It's a cultural value. It's ingrained in everything. If we feel like somebody is saying something to us indirectly, we feel like they're lying to us. It tells us a lot about their character, blah, blah, blah. We make all these assumptions about them. That can be very different in Indonesia, where directness is seen as rude, right? So sometimes we say yes when it really means no, or, well, we never say no, actually. It's usually yes when it really means no. For Americans, this can be really jarring. This can seem very uncomfortable, actually. And for Americans who are unfamiliar with Indonesian culture, it can maybe make you seem untrustworthy, right? Or it can make you seem like you don't really know what you're talking about, etc. So I think you need to reframe this in your mind when you're in the US or the US classroom. It's not about being blunt. It's about respecting your audience's time. So saying what you need to say and moving on. As you may know, the US is a giant place. This can vary from place to place. So where I'm from in the South, maybe we are less direct. We're a little more similar to Indonesia. Whereas in the North, they're so direct and they scare me so much because they just say it how it is. So if you do end up in the US, take a look around, figure out what your local culture is. Common clarity killers include filler words, which I talked about earlier. Overqualifying, so I want you to just say what you believe. I don't want you to say, well, I think maybe I'm right because, well, I'm not sure if I'm right, but actually I could be right. And no, just tell me what you think. Run-on sentences, we don't like that. We want it to be clear and concise. And then I'm going to say it again. I've said it 100 times. It's okay to have an opinion. Even if your opinion's wrong, your opinion is just how you're showing you understand. Something I think that can help you when you're trying to be more clear is the one idea per sentence. So if you have a sentence, stick to one idea. It doesn't need to be a run-on. And use simple words. So we're going to practice saying it in one sentence and then expanding. In your groups, your same groups, I'm going to show you a statement. And I want you to work with your group to determine how you would say the statement more clear, more concise. And then be prepared to share. And I'm going to want a different group to share this time. And I have more chocolate. So we'll take a shorter time on this one, maybe 2 minutes. Here is your statement. So I was thinking that, in terms of my research topic, which is something that I've been very interested in for quite a long time now, basically since I started my undergraduate studies, I wanted to maybe try blah, 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 blah. Like, what are you trying to say? That is so unclear. So in your groups, I want you to make this sentence more clear, or this paragraph more clear. Maybe you can deliver it to us in 1 to 3 sentences. The shorter, the better. Take your minute now. I see a lot of good discussion happening. Do we need more time? Yes, okay. Okay, take 1 more minute. 1 more minute. All right, I'm starting to hear the conversation die down, or you are very shy. I'm not sure which. But for a chocolate bar and Education USA booklet on the line, who thinks that they can say this more clear? Oh, I saw a hand straight up in the back. Pak, mungkin dia tas. Yeah. All right.
So
Can we get your
hello.
name and the statement more clear?
Okay, so my name is Aisha, and I think the statement could be restated by like, in terms of my research topic, I'm interested in exploring and investigating the effect of social media in university students' first year's mental health. I think.
Incredible. Round of applause. We have a chocolate and a book coming right up there for you. Thank you so much. Did anyone say anything different, or was it kind of, oh, in the front here. Okay. Let's go in the front here, maybe. Sorry to make you run. Let me get another chocolate.
Okay. My research investigates the influence of social media like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter on mental health and well-being of first-year university students.
And what was your name?
Anissa.
Anissa, congratulations. You did a spectacular job as well. You have a chocolate and a book coming right at you. Okay, great. I think that was pretty straightforward, right? So moving on, we have engaging your audience. Hopefully you feel slightly engaged. So who is your audience in the United States? Maybe you think it's the people around you. Maybe you think it's the other students. It's not. It's the professor. The other students don't pick your grade. The professor or the TA picks your grade, right? So the audience we're performing for is the professor. Understanding your audience shapes everything. It shapes the words you choose, the examples you use, or your tone. This is why it's crucially important to learn what resonates with your professor. And where is a great way to meet your professor and learn what they like? I talked about it earlier. Where is a great way to learn what your professor likes? Office hours, yes. So if you go to your office hours with your professor, I assure you, you'll be more successful in the class. And then something you can take advantage of in the US classroom, US university classes particularly are very diverse. There are students from all over the world, generally. Sometimes maybe in one class you can have 20 or 30 different countries represented. You can really use this to bounce off ideas and find connections with other students in the class. Use it as an asset and not a barrier. So storytelling can be a great tool. It can be especially good for you, since you're bringing stories from Indonesia that people in the US have never heard before, or maybe can't really even relate to. I think maybe here we think of stories as an informal thing, something you do at home, something probably your dad does, probably tells you a lot of random stories. But in the US, storytelling can be a legitimate rhetorical tool. So if you use storytelling in a classroom discussion, that can be a great way to get your point across. Professors and peers also can connect better with stories far more than some abstract theory or example. So I put a personal statement here. When I was researching this back home, I noticed, but there's endless statements you could use. When I was back home in Indonesia, my experience with this topic was da-da-da-da-da. My time in the United States has shown me that Indonesia and the United States differ in this way, da-da-da-da. Or thinking about this thing, da-da-da-da. A well-placed story makes your data more persuasive, not less academic. So I really need, and in your mind, maybe you think stories are an informal thing. Change that, think of them as more formal. This is cute. So this is at Aminef, we do our words storytelling competition here at America. These are some of our students, they're Indonesian students, and they're practicing storytelling. And I put this picture in here just because I think it underscores how important storytelling is in American culture. Ways to make your points memorable in the US classroom: use eye contact. I know it might make you nervous, but it's really important, especially with older generations in the United States, to look them in the eyes. Even younger people in the US struggle with this, so it's not something that just foreigners would struggle with. Repeat your core idea throughout your talk, so you've noticed I've probably said the same things over and over again. Maybe that's becoming boring, but hopefully when you leave here, you'll remember what I said. and then connect what came before. This is like a superpower move. Anytime you can build on what someone else in the class said, or on especially something the professor said, you can show that you're paying attention and that you're engaged. And this just adds to your credibility and shows that you know about the topic that's being discussed, right? Finally, we have handling Q&A sessions. So I made it clear in the beginning, question and answer is a huge aspect of the American education experience. So some of the types of question and answer that you might run into, I think I covered these, but on-the-spot questions, discussions, virtual discussions, which I talked about, questions from fellow students, so students might ask each other questions during a presentation or group project. This is probably going to be in a more informal setting, so when you're working outside of the classroom, and then questions during office hours. Something I also want to impress upon you. In the United States, it's always an okay time to ask a question. So for example, if I was presenting this slide right now, and you had a random question pop in your head, if you raised your hand, I would not take offense to that at all. In fact, I would probably be complimented because it would mean that you're listening to what I'm saying, right? So there's always a good time to ask a question in the US classroom. Maybe that's a little different between here and Indonesia, between Indonesia and the US. Sometimes when we get asked questions, we can feel like we're being placed on the hot seat. And that can be scary because maybe we don't know what questions are going to be asked. Probably we don't know. And questions can go in lots of different unexpected directions. Reframe questions as a chance for your audience to show you that they were engaged in what you're saying. Questions are also an opportunity for you to enforce your credibility, so they prove that you know what you're talking about. If you get a question that you don't know the answer to, here's what I want you to do. Listen to the full question before responding. Even if you do know the answer, you need to listen to the full question. It's okay to pause and think. It's usually okay to compliment the person on their question, so say, thank you, that was a great question, or let me think about that. And then it's always a good idea to repeat the question. That tells the person asking the question that you understood what they said, and it also makes it clear to the rest of the room what the question was. Keep the answer focused and don't over-answer. Don't ramble. I think a lot of times with questions we can ramble. If you don't know the answer, just be honest. That's okay, especially in the classroom. Classroom is a place for you to learn. It's not for a place for you to come and know everything to begin with. If you already knew everything, there wouldn't be a point for you to go to school, right? Never bluff. Don't just make something up because you're nervous. It's always going to be obvious. Everyone's always going to be able to tell. And then you can use the bridge technique. So if it's like an informal assessment in the classroom and you're asked a question you should know the answer to and you don't know the answer to, this is what I want you to do. Move from the question to something related that you know, right? So if you asked me a question about EducationUSA, maybe I don't know a lot of really super details about EducationUSA, but I do know about Fulbright programs, and that's kind of like EducationUSA, and I can talk about that for hours, right? And then especially if it's a question your professor asks you, I would recommend that if you failed to answer it or answered it poorly, it's always okay to follow up via email or in office hours. Professors are going to love that. It's going to show that you were thinking about what you said and you had a change of opinion, a change of heart, or you had more that you wanted to say, or that the question caused you to explore the topic more, which is a good thing. Be sure when you're handling difficult questions, just stay calm. Always say, like, that's an interesting perspective. Here's how I see it. I won't lie to you. Sometimes in the American classroom, discussions, especially between students, can get heated. I studied political science in university, and as you can imagine, political science conversations can get really spicy in the classroom. So I think it's important to approach those dynamics, especially with respect, and then learn how to disagree gracefully. Like I said, in the US, it's not wrong to disagree. It's just about how you disagree. Practice staying composed under pressure. I will say, you can overdo this. A lot of times you'll be in a class and there'll be like one person and they always play the devil's advocate. You know that term, that it's an idiom, but it's like, oh, I always have a difference of opinion, even if I myself don't personally agree with it. After a while, that can get annoying. Don't be that guy, okay? Use this strategically. And then in the US, one last thing I want to impress upon you, it's common for academics to ask you a question that's really hard to answer or that they know you don't know the answer to. A lot of times they're just pushing you to be flexible about how you answer questions or to encourage you to then leave the class and study up on whatever the question or area of knowledge was. Okay, I have a few final notes for you. You might notice this mirrors the 3.5 format. So I'm going to show you what we've talked about today. We've talked about participating, especially participating early and often, the structure when you're giving presentations or even written material, confidence, how to manage your nerves and use your voice, clarity, how to be clear in presenting your arguments, how to engage with your professors and your fellow students, and then how to handle question and answer time, which is a huge part of the US academic experience, and something I think we're about to do here in a second. So I do want to put a quick plug in. The next session is with my friend Lauren. She works with me at Aminef. She is also American, and she's going to be teaching you, or talking to you, not teaching you, talking to you about how to ace your US admissions interviews. Sometimes universities have interviews that you need to ace, and that will be May 19th at 7 p.m. right here at America. Finally, thank you so much. Thank you to America. Thank you to Education USA. Thank you to Aminef for allowing me to come here. And thank you guys for being here and participating so well. I'm so happy with how you participated. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Parker. So let's go to the Q&A session. So we're going to open up the Q&A session not just for everyone here, but also for everyone who is watching from home. So we'll take a few questions here from everyone who joined the session here at America. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and then ask your question. We'll go to the gentleman right here first, and then we'll go to you.
Okay, thank you so much for the time. So I'm particularly interested in the part about crafting a strong introductions, especially the part of the hook factor, because sometimes, you know, our introductions often determines whether our presentation will go well or not. So some presenters sometimes use statistics and officials data to open up their presentations, and then to make it to sounds more convincing and impactful. So do you think a strong hook always needs data, or can personal stories and questions be just as effective?
That's a really great question, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the question was, can a strong hook, should it always use data, or can sometimes personal stories be just as impactful? I think that a lot of times when you're making a strong hook and you're using data, your point can get lost. So if you do use data in your hook, I would recommend taking one key point that really illustrates what you're trying to say in the rest of your presentation and make that your hook. If you have more than like one statistic or one data point, I think that can get kind of muddled and distracting in the beginning. I also do think a personal story can be a great hook, and then data can be something that's in your body later on. So I guess it would depend on the quality of your data. If you have a great data point that really illustrates what you're trying to say in the rest of your argument, that could be a great hook. If you don't have that singular point that really sticks out and shows what you're trying to say, maybe that's a great time for a personal story. Yeah, good question.
Does that answer your question? All right, thank you.
Also, I did want to say, if you guys have questions about just the university setting in the United States, I'm happy to answer those as well.
So it could be any question that relates to studying in the US in this presentation. All right.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Parker. My name is Jojo. I would like to ask you about delivering the presentation. Sometimes whenever I need to deliver the presentation, I get so nervous and suddenly all the materials that I've already prepared previously in my mind suddenly get lost or blank. And I would like to ask you, based on your experience, what would you do in that situation? Like it's really challenging whenever you're delivering the presentation and then you suddenly lost and you cannot do anything, like freeze in that moment. Thank you.
Excellent question.
Yeah, great question. So what do you do when you're in a situation that you're presenting and suddenly you freeze or you froze and you lost all the information that you had in your head or what you wanted to say? That's a good question. I think first, the most important thing to do is prepare, right? So the prep that you do before. If you read over things enough or you think about things enough, at some point they become second nature in your mind and you can easily recall them, right? So I think the more preparation you do before, the less likely you are to freeze because, of course, you're going to be more confident about what you're talking about since you're able to easily recall it. In the moment, however, sometimes we just get nervous. That's fair. I think for me, the biggest thing that has made a difference is reframing in my mind that we're all kind of here for the same purpose. In the university setting especially, people aren't really paying attention really closely to what I'm saying. They're not going to remember it when they leave the classroom. And we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, right? We're all trying to get the good grade. So I think if you reframe the stakes as lower, like things are not as high stakes as your brain is telling you they are, that can help you in that moment of freeze. And then I also think, like I said in the presentation, taking the good 3 deep breaths can really help in the moment as well. Maybe that answered your question. Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the next question. I think I saw someone, okay, in the back there.
Thank you. My name is Eldo. I have a friend that in the next 3 months, he will study at the US.
Woohoo.
And I want to give him some advice. There is very different culture between what Indonesian class look like and what you said before. If you can give like 3 minutes or 5 minutes talking or some kind of tips how to maybe adapt better at the US in the next 3 months, can you say something? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's a good question. So he has a friend who's going to the US to study, and he knows the culture is different. What are maybe some things that he can do to prepare for culture in the United States? I think that culture is one of those things that it can be hard to prepare for. Maybe you think that you are prepared for it, but then you get there and you experience it, and it's like it's all around you, right? It can be overwhelming. I think the 2 biggest points I would encourage him to explore are the culture of individualism in the United States and the culture of being direct. I think those are probably the 2 biggest differences that I noticed being here in Indonesia. In the United States, you really are a single person in a big pond. What you do reflects on you. Typically, you spend a lot more alone time. But with that, you're expected to be much more personally creative. You're expected to be louder, I guess, voice your opinions louder, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think directness. Directness is something, especially if he's coming from Java, that is going to be probably like a smack in the face a little bit. People are just going to tell you how they feel or what they think, and it's not meant to be rude. It's not meant to be offensive. It's just a different way of approaching things. As far as preparing, I would say consuming American media is probably the best thing you can do, or meeting with Americans abroad. There are, especially here in Jakarta, there are a fair number of Americans or Indonesians who have been to America. I think that can be great as well because they have the perspective of both Indonesia and the United States. I think meeting with them, discussing with them what they notice as being different, whether they're American in Indonesia or Indonesian and they've been to America. And then, like I said, consuming US media. I do think a lot of movies and TV shows about the US or that take place in the US really do accurately show sometimes how the culture is there. Maybe it's more fancy on the big screen, but I think that the actual culture part is very similar. Yeah, good question.
Is that helpful? Yeah? Okay. So we actually have a good question from our audience online.
Yeah.
So can you share a memorable public speaking experience from your time studying or teaching here?
In Indonesia.
Yeah. So while you're studying in the US or while you're teaching here in Indonesia?
I see. Yes. Okay. So for the US, like I said earlier, the university experience is all encompassing. So it's not just about what you do in the classroom, it's about what you do outside of the classroom. For me, one of the things that I was interested in and participated in was student government. So in student government, we met every week, and I had to present like my bills, basically. Their bills to get funding for different things around campus. And people come at you hard. People want to debate. Everyone has an opinion. So I think those were always really memorable for me because I had to always prepare. I had to be very prepared for that. And then, of course, when you're on the spot and the adrenaline gets going and it feels like people are attacking you, that can also be memorable, for better or for worse. For Indonesia, I put a picture of it in here. It was a stage, and it's me and everyone who works at my school dressed in red. And basically, this was for our school anniversary. And the anniversary happened to be on like the 4th week I had been in Indonesia. And I had to present in front of the entire school. It was 1,500 students, 1,500 students. This poem in Indonesian and Javanese, and my Indonesian was not, that was like, I've been here for 4 weeks. And I did it, it was good, but it was quite a large poem. And I do remember that being the first time I was like, whoa, I have no idea what I'm saying right now, but I'm just up here doing it. So I think for that, also it was preparation. Preparation is the most important thing. The more you prepare in advance, the better you'll perform. And I think in the university setting, that means studying, right? So the more you study, the more you know about the subject area, the better you'll be able to participate in the class.
So basically, when you prepare and I guess you know the content of your presentation very well. Basically, even if you're nervous, you can calm yourself down by saying, I know the answer, right? I just have to calm myself down and then answer that.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. When you know the content, you can be confident, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we have time for one more question. So, right. Thank you. So this might be the last question. See if we can squeeze 2 questions, actually.
Hi, I want to ask about office hours. Is there a boundaries? Because I'm afraid that, we are in a different culture. Indonesia and USA is like, Indonesia is more like subtle and afraid if we are like make them not comfortable with our conversation. Is there any boundaries or like how we should approach our professor to make the conversation between us is more like, I don't know how the vibe, is it professional or like more easygoing, yeah, more formal? How is it to approach the office hour conversation? Thank you.
That is such a great question. How do we approach office hours? Should we be professional or keep it personal? This was one of the biggest differences I noticed when I came to Indonesia. All of my students wanted to like hang out with me outside of school. In the US, that would never be something that would really happen. Maybe at the university level, it's more common. I think with the office hours, it's best in the beginning to keep it professional. I think that's probably the best approach. The office hours are scheduled usually at a set time. The professor is there, and they're usually there to answer questions that you might have about the lecture or the class, or they're there to help you with some sort of class project, whether it be a paper or a presentation or something like that. If through the course of that, it becomes more personal, which I'm sure it will. Most Americans are very nice. They're very warm people and they want to hear about you, especially if you're from somewhere else. They want to hear about your experience. That's okay. But if you're going to office hours, I would go prepared with some sort of professional question. You don't need to go to your office hours and just like suddenly start talking about your professor's family or religion or whether they're married or not. I think that would come across as quite jarring maybe to some Americans. Really good question.
Right, I think we have time for one very short last question. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Hello, Mr. Parker. My name is Emma. I would ask about your statement before that based on your presentation, expressing a wrong opinion is highly encouraging. Is that also applied in the Master of Law, perhaps because I want to pursue the LLM program? Because in the LLM, I just know that we need to understand a lot or comprehensive about some issue that we want to discuss in the class. Thank you.
Okay, so I think the question is, in a Masters of Law program, is it important to be able to express your opinion? Oh,
Mas, bisa
maybe we
kasih
have
lagi
a follow-up.
mikrofonnya?
Yeah, because in your presentation before, you say that we can express our opinion even though it false or incorrect.
Yep.
But based on our practice and as far as I know, LLM program, we need to ensure that everything that we discuss in the class or perhaps something that we want to study is the topic is correct, or perhaps it's based on the law or regulation that applied in the US. So is that expressing the wrong opinion also applied in the LLM program, or I don't know whether there is exception or not. Thank you.
Right.
Good question. So in the law, basically all of law school in the United States is based around backing up your opinion and proving why your opinion is right. I think in a master's law program, you're going to be doing that a lot. Something that you might find interesting in the US is that a lot of law programs will have you defend opinions that maybe you don't necessarily agree with or aren't necessarily yours. And like you said in your question, and in that case, it's especially important for you to fall back on what is in the books or what is written knowledge. But yes, in a law program, you're definitely going to be expected to express your opinion.
All right, thank you. Does that answer your question? I hope that does.
We can talk after as well.
Yeah.
I think we're running low.
Yeah, so we're running out of time. Thank you so much, Parker, for being here. I truly appreciate your time. This was a great presentation. I think everyone is enjoying that. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Please don't forget to join the next session also on May 19th. And we hope to see you there. And I'm going to give the floor back to our Ad America team.
Well, thank you so much to our speaker for today, Parker Raybourne, and also our moderator, Caroline Darmanto, for such an insightful, engaging session. Please give them another round of applause, everyone. Thank you very much. And earlier today, we asked our online participant a quick trivia quiz, and the question was, which technique can help reduce nervousness before speaking? And the correct answer is B, deep breathing. And also congratulations and shout out to @nisrina.aulia from Instagram for answering it correctly. And before we close today's session, we also would like to invite all of you on our upcoming event, Speak with Confidence, Ace Your US Admission Interview. Join us on Tuesday, May 19 from 7 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. for a special session designed to help you prepare for your US admission interviews with a greater confidence and also clarity. As the second part of our Speak with Confidence series, this session will help you strengthen your communication and interview skills so you can present your ideas, experience, and goals more effectively during the university application process. The session will feature Lauren Cole, a Fulbright ETA alum, and will be moderated as well by Mela Tupono, one of the advisors from Education USA. And also don't forget to participate in our Speak with Confidence challenge as a part of our social media activation. There will be three participants who will receive English proficiency test vouchers by Education USA. And also, if you would like to know more about our upcoming events, don't forget to follow our social media platforms. We have YouTube, Instagram, X, and Facebook at AT America, or you can also visit our official website at www.atamerica.or.id for more information regarding our program. And with that, thank you so much for joining us in this lovely evening. My name is Nora Fakira, and I'll see you at the next At America event. Bye. Oke, everyone, boleh